Thanks for downloading this edition of The Why Factor from the BBC, a programme that seeks to find out why we do the things we do. I hope you enjoy it. BBC World Service, I'm Mike Williams with The Why Factor. Today, something ancient and something very modern too. Sometimes a crime, an act of vandalism, sometimes a work of art, sometimes perhaps both. Today, graffiti.
You just express yourself through colours, shapes, patterns, lines, dots, drips. I love drips. Oh, it's just the freedom of it.
There's a tunnel running under the railway tracks just beside Waterloo Station here in London. It's dark, it's noisy, it's crowded with people and the fumes of solvent from spray paint. And artists from around the world, about 40 of them, are doing remarkable work here. And it's just filling this tunnel with colour.
The purpose of graffiti is actually to make the walls look better. We don't do that because we want to make some money out of it. This is more honest. Yeah, I believe that it is an art.
Graffiti is definitely about getting your name as far and wide as possible. You know, you're judged by other writers on your skill, but also how prolific you are, and if you manage to get your name in places that are difficult to get to.
I think I start this because I don't have any other voice. That was my only opportunity to have a voice in the society to say something, no? This is like part of my life. It's a regular day of my life.
This modern style of graffiti, all colour and curving shapes or stark jagged letters, this style has its origins in New York City in the 1970s, when the subway trains were daubed with paint. It's been adopted by graffiti writers around the world. But graffiti itself is a very, very old thing.
So the Oxford English Dictionary definition of graffiti says it's marks that are left on walls illicitly.
Professor Richard Clay is an art historian at Newcastle University in the UK.
The illicitness is really important to setting acceptable art apart from that which is counter to official acceptance. We could trace it all the way back over 30,000 years ago. The Grottes d'Arcy, which are in Burgundy in France. These are images and signs that are left. Some of them are clearly approved of by the community, but there's the occasional mark which looks to be illicit.
What kind of mark?
It's a hand mark. It's a stencil, and it looks like a kid might have blown paint over their own hand to leave a mark. Well, it was quite a revelation to see this hand. It's just haunting, this tiny little hand left by this child so long ago. It's such a connection with humanity of the distant past.
This is all quite legal, probably. No one seems quite sure if this tunnel has been designated as a place where you can paint on the walls, or if it's simply that the police turn a blind eye to it. Today's event, a competition, has been organised by two graffiti writers, Jan and Darren. They've gone legitimate now, starting up a little company called Chrome and Black to sell cans of spray paint. And they let me have a go at painting my own tag. This is remarkably satisfying, actually.
There you go. It's like painting with sausages. You just draw sausages and then they turn into letters. He's actually going to do the whole thing himself. Wow.
Is that all right?
Yeah, hold on.
How did you two get started?
I first saw that book, Subway Art, by Henry Chalfont and Martha Cooper. Two photographers in the 70s in New York who decided to start photographing the subway trains, which influenced a lot of generations in the UK.
How old were you?
I was like 15, 14.
Yeah, I got into about 93 when I was about 15.
What is it about 15-year-old boys that makes them want to make a mark like that?
I know, it's just colourful, it's rebellious, you're breaking into places, you're doing artwork, you're getting away with it. The whole persona of it appeals to teenagers.
Like an alter ego, like a nom de plume. As a 15-year-old kid, I suppose you want to be a bit edgy, a bit sort of dangerous.
That's about right.
So now that you've got your letters on the wall in their sketch form, you'd start to sort of fill in the letters with whatever colour of your choice. In your case, it's an orange.
Okay.
So you just start moving from side to side so that you can cover as much space as possible.
Today we are surrounded by images. Does graffiti still have the impact that it did?
Oh, I think it can. I really do think it can. I think the power of graffiti is that when it's put in a public space and it's a clearly political statement, it's a challenge to everybody who walks by, a challenge to their assumptions. I think perhaps we see in some of the arrests that go on all over the world of graffiti artists, the fact that the authorities are anxious about some of the scrawlings on the walls. It's very clear that artists are being targeted because their political views are unacceptable.
My name is Rana Jarbu. I'm a Saudi-born researcher, analyst, and social documentarian, and I've been researching and documenting graffiti across the Arab world since 2007. A lot of people keep forgetting where the Syrian crisis all started, and it started with a few kids in Daraa that wrote on the walls, "Your turn has come, doctor," in reference to Bashar al-Assad, because he's also an ophthalmologist. And they were inspired by the uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt. These kids were arrested and tortured, and that stirred up the whole town, and that started the movement, the non-violent movement and uprising in Syria. At first, it was remarkable to see dissidents' voice on the streets, because from what I've seen in Syria before, there was only pictures of Bashar al-Assad or Hafiz al-Assad and glorifications of the Assad regime, and a little bit of poetry here and there in some alleys in Damascus. In Syria, it's very difficult to hear anyone talking politics before the uprising, and then after that, you just saw it on the street. It was so visible. And then there was the whole spray man phenomena. It was not just one person. A lot of people adopted that name, the spray man. And you found the spray man from every little town in Syria, and you can find them on YouTube, you can find them in social media. You saw a splurge of expressions and voices you never heard before.
It's like, for me, painting trains in the graffiti world, that's like the pinnacle. You're with your mates, you're bonding, you're out there dead of night, people are sleeping, sneaking around, security, train noises, electricity and cameras, like an adventure. Yeah, I used to love it. Sometimes I do trains at night time and come out in the morning, go to Earls Court Station, and I just see it running past with all the people on it. It's the best feeling ever.
Have you been in trouble with the police?
Yeah. In the 90s, I was in quite a lot of trouble with the police, doing trains all the time. Youth custody, young offenders, most of the time. And they just thought, hopefully, he'll learn his lesson and come out and not do it again, which was totally wrong. Come out and I was even worse.
The illicitness is an interesting point, looking at Roman history, and we look at Pompeii, and Pompeii's amazing because, courtesy of Vesuvius, so much graffiti survives. What I was surprised to find out was that in the townhouses in Pompeii, about 80% of the house was actually open to the public, and they would leave graffiti on the walls, and it would be tolerated. And in fact, to clean the graffiti off the walls of your house in the public space, as we'd understand it, would be seen as a sign of weakness.
There we go, let me step back, have a look. Oh, that looks a bit rubbish.
Well, the beauty of it is that you can always elongate it. If you look back, you step back and you see that it's too small, the letter that you're doing.
Small, isn't it?
You can always bring down the bottom of it, that's it.
How much of it is about making a mark, leaving a mark somewhere public, your mark, your name, your tag?
Yeah, that's basically it. You just want people to see your name. That's the main aim of the game, to see your name.
It's called getting up. That's the terminology from New York. They used to call it getting up. And you just get up all over the city. And there's a sort of a loose kind of crown or like badge of honour being if you go all city. So you're everywhere in the whole city.
It's interesting that many of the graffiti writers I've spoken to, what they do is write their own name. That's the point of it, to leave their tag. What's that about? Why?
There are certain people who find society quite frustrating and quite alienating. And In any society, whether it's the church or the government or the authorities, there are certain rules about who can leave marks where, and for some individuals that's frustrating and they can't understand why individuals don't have a right to leave a mark too. And I think that graffiti artists, their urge to leave a mark is pushing back a little bit at the dominant voice.
Then the Free Syrian Army also started to spray graffiti, and then it started becoming violent. You had the pro-government graffiti that said "Al-Asad أو نحرق البلد," which means Assad or we'll burn the country. And then you had the opposition come back and fix that and say "نحرق الأسد ونبني البلد," which means we'll burn Assad and we'll build the country. So there were these graffiti wars going on between pro and anti-regime. When ISIS came into the picture, then we saw all these religious graffiti, and then there was just all these graffiti wars all over Syria. You know, we've been having all these competing ideologies, but also competing narratives about these ideologies.
Sometimes it's driven by politics. Sometimes it's just "I was here," initials and love hearts carved into trees. Sometimes it's that I love somebody or I love something.
One of my very favorites that tugs at the heartstrings is "I'm in love and it's finals week." That's just a terrible dilemma to be in.
Quinn Dombrowski used to work at the University of Chicago, at the library there, and she began to notice graffiti on the walls and desks, graffiti that said a lot about the lives of the young students there.
There was a fair amount of complaining about the weather in the winter. There were a lot of times when people had left a note for someone else, encouraging them in whatever endeavor brought them to the library, that they can do it and it'll be okay.
Quinn, you've categorised these into some lovely chapters: advice, logic, love, sex, despair. There's one here that says "deliver me from this," and somebody else has written underneath "me too, anyone, please," and then next to it "your tears sustain me."
I read those as solidarity as much as anything, that, everyone's going through a fairly rigorous academic quarter, and everyone has challenges, and seeing all of the "me too," I have, so many more exams as well. It's a way to feel less alone rather than, kind of sucking you further down. There's a really rich dialogue there of their own beauty and horror. Beauty and horror. Really? Both? Yeah, and sometimes in the same one. I mean, there was the entire first stanza of T.S. Eliot's love song of J. Alfred Prufrock was written in beautiful handwriting on the wall. And then below it, there was someone who had written this horrible screed, calling the person who had written an imbecile, and it's no surprise you're a liberal arts major, enjoy living in poverty after college.
It's a shame. It's a nice poem. Let us go then, you and I think it starts, doesn't it? When the evening spread out against the sky.
Exactly. So that entire first stanza was written just in this beautiful handwriting. And then there's this vicious outburst right below it. But the original author of the graffiti, or the transcriber of the poem, instead of responding directly to the person, simply continued with the next stanza below it as his response. And I thought that was really lovely.
The power of literacy, to be able to read and to be able to leave a message on a wall that other people will be able to decode, is one thing. But there is a bit of a revolution, really, in the 19th century. Once you start to get mass-produced paint, it becomes cheap, it's accessible. It's not just about scratching into the wall anymore. Then in 1949, the spray can's invented, and it's put to new use. You spend less time in front of the wall, you're less likely to get caught. These are really powerful tools.
Can we talk for a couple of minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Tell me who you are and what you're doing here.
I'm a graffiti writer from London, and I'm just here competing at the Battle of Waterloo.
And she is the tag you're putting on the wall here?
Indeed it is, yeah.
What do you think the appeal is of writing your name? What is this now, 2-3 metres high on a wall? What's the appeal?
For most people, graffiti is about the fame, so it's about getting your name as far and as wide as possible, and that's a huge appeal. But also for me, it's about freedom of expression and reclaiming public spaces that are often taken away from you, or you have advertisements pushed in your face, and it's just a way of being able to say, actually, I've got something to say, and here's my message, and I haven't asked for permission to do it. I'm just putting it out there.
there's also a voice that's not being documented enough. There's these graffiti that are peaceful. They're not talking in this violent language that like, oh, we'll burn the country or we'll burn the asset, you know? It's using very tolerant and peaceful language. I mean, they're no longer targeting an authority figure or the regime. They're actually trying to talk to the community, communicate with the community in a very peaceful language, and trying to reclaim the state and reclaim the revolution because it was hijacked by violence. You have even peaceful graffiti that's coming out now that's actually using the same language, using religious verses from the Quran, or one was from the Khalifa Umar al-Khattab that said, how dare you take people as slaves when they're born free? And I'm hopeful that people pay more attention to them as well, because they are the majority, I feel. These are the refugees that are fleeing from the country, that are just trying to live a peaceful life.
There's some remarkable work being made in this tunnel. It is beautiful. I mean, vibrant colours, clearly very talented, some very talented artists. But we've just stepped outside now, and look at the wall behind us.
Yeah.
Fairly crude, somebody just come along with a brown.
Yeah, obviously with the
spray.
graffiti you get the good and the bad. You get the artistic work, you get the pieces and the 3D and the characters, then you get the raw essence of graffiti, which is the tagging.
Very, very satisfying, actually. And it's fast. You just see the effects, it just happens so quickly.
Yeah,
it's very gratifying.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the final product's very elegant compared with some of the stuff we've seen here today, but we've got TWF, the Y factor, bright orange on the wall. I made a little bit of a mess of it in parts.
No, it looks good.
It's a bit orange, a bit green. That star's a little bit wonky, throws things out a little bit.
That's great for a first attempt. I think you can be proud of that.
I've seen one little bit I've missed. I've just got to get back in there. Thanks for listening to The Y Factor. If you'd like to hear more episodes, there's a wide range of programmes on our website. Everything from nationality to nudity, human rights and death and laughter too. Visit bbcworldservice.com/